There are stories Hollywood tells you, and then there are the stories Hollywood never meant for you to hear. For decades, Dirty Dancing was wrapped in the golden glow of nostalgia, a summer romance, a perfect lift, a line so memorable it became a cultural anthem. But Patrick Swayze, the man who made that film breathe, spent years carrying something heavier than the legend. He carried the truth, and before the world lost him, he finally began letting it out, slowly, carefully, like a man who had waited long enough. What he revealed about those sweltering weeks on set was not a fairy tale. It was something far more human, far more complicated, and in many ways, far more remarkable. To understand what happened on the set of Dirty Dancing, you have to first understand the man who walked onto it. Patrick Wayne Swayze was not simply a performer. He was a product of extraordinary pressure, shaped from childhood into something rare, an athlete who could move like poetry and a dancer who could throw a punch. Born in Houston, Texas, in August of 1952, he grew up under the demanding eye of his mother, Patsy Swayze, a choreographer of considerable reputation who ran her dance studio with the precision of a military general. Patrick was her most visible student, and she made sure he knew what discipline meant before he knew what leisure felt like. From the time he could walk steadily, Patrick trained. Ballet, jazz, gymnastics. His childhood was a revolving door of studios and rehearsal halls. He was different from the other boys around him, and he knew it. He played football with a ferocity that surprised people who assumed dancers were soft. But a devastating knee injury in high school ended that chapter before it truly began. Rather than mourn it, Patrick redirected. He packed his ambition and boarded a bus to New York City, where he trained at the Joffrey Ballet and the Harkis Ballet, institutions that stripped dancers down to their raw foundations and rebuilt them with ruthless precision. It was there that Patrick discovered something about himself. He did not just want to perform. He needed to perform. It was the only place he felt entirely real. Broadway came next. He took the stage in Greece as Danny Zuko, earning attention even in borrowed spotlight. Hollywood followed. Small roles accumulated. A Marine trainer here, a gang leader there, a heartbreaking guest appearance on a television drama that left viewers shaken. He was circling something, not quite touching it yet, but always circling. Then, in 1986, a script arrived that would change everything. It was low budget, set in the summer of 1963, built around a world of forbidden dances and class divides. The producers believed in it modestly. The studio believed in it even less. But Patrick Swayze read it and felt something ignite. He was going to play Johnny Castle. And Johnny Castle was going to matter. What audiences never fully appreciated, what the posters and the merchandise and the countless parodies obscured, was how deeply personal that role was for Swayze. Johnny was a man who had been defined by what other people thought he was. A hired dancer, a working-class kid, someone others looked through rather than at. Patrick understood that feeling with a specificity that went beyond acting. He had spent years being overlooked, miscast, or placed just beneath the level of recognition his talent deserved. When he delivered the film's iconic line, the one about corners, it came from somewhere genuine. It was not a scripted moment. It was a declaration that had been building inside him for years. But the set itself? That was another story entirely. The film was shot during the summer of 1986 at Lake Lure, North Carolina, and the heat was relentless. Temperatures climbed mercilessly, and the cast and crew worked long hours in conditions that tested everyone's patience. For Patrick, already managing a knee that had never truly healed from his athletic years, each day of choreography was a quiet battle. He pushed through rehearsals without complaint, refusing to allow the physical toll to show. Those around him later recalled that he never once asked for a break he hadn't earned. He stretched longer than anyone else. He stayed later than the schedule required. He was, by every account, a professional in the purest sense of the word. But professionalism, it turned out, was only one part of what Dirty Dancing required. The other part was chemistry. And chemistry, as Patrick discovered, cannot be manufactured through discipline alone. His co-star, Jennifer Grey, was not a trained dancer in the formal sense. She worked from instinct, from emotion, from the interior life of a scene rather than its technical architecture. Where Patrick counted beats and mapped footwork with the precision of a craftsman, Jennifer felt her way through scenes, allowing the moment to shape a performance rather than the other way around. These were not simply different techniques. They were fundamentally different philosophies about what acting and dancing were supposed to be The friction between them did not begin on the Dirty Dancing set. It had an earlier origin. They had worked together previously on Red Dawn, the 1984 Cold War thriller directed by John Milius, and the dynamic had been strained. Patrick's intensity, that laser focus he brought to every project, had unnerved Jennifer. She found him difficult to read, and he found her approach frustrating in the way that only someone committed to precision can find spontaneity frustrating. By the time the two were cast opposite each other in Dirty Dancing, Jennifer's initial reaction was something close to dread. She did not want him there. She did not know how to work with him, and she was not quiet about it. What happened next is one of the more quietly remarkable moments in the making of that film. Before cameras rolled, before choreography was finalized, Patrick approached Jennifer privately. He did not arrive with excuses or explanations. He arrived with honesty, the kind that costs something. He acknowledged the tension. He apologized for it. Jennifer Grey later recalled that in that moment, she saw something in him she had not seen before: vulnerability. The stern exterior cracked, and underneath it was a man who genuinely cared about the film, about their partnership, and about getting it right. The walls between them did not fall entirely, but they shifted enough to let something through. That something would eventually become one of the most celebrated on-screen partnerships in the history of American cinema. But it did not happen cleanly or easily. The friction never fully disappeared. It transformed. During rehearsals, Patrick's attention to detail often read as controlling to Jennifer. When he corrected her footwork, which he did frequently and with the confidence of someone who had been trained to believe that corrections were actor care, she experienced it as domination rather than partnership. She wanted to contribute to the choreography, not simply execute it. The gap between their intentions and their perceptions created a recurring tension that ran like a fault line beneath the surface of every scene they rehearsed together. Crew members who were present during those weeks have since described a set that was, at times, charged with a silence between the two leads that was almost audible. What was remarkable, and what became the defining irony of Dirty Dancing, was that this tension did not weaken the film. It became the film. Every time Baby flinched in Johnny's arms, the flinch was real. Every time she laughed nervously in the middle of a moment that demanded seriousness, the laughter was genuine. Patrick later admitted that one of the film's most beloved scenes, a quiet, intimate moment where his character runs a hand along Jennifer's arm and she dissolves into helpless giggles, was not scripted. He was, by his own admission, frustrated in that moment. She could not stop laughing. The director, recognizing something irreplaceable in the rawness of it, kept the cameras rolling and kept it in the final cut. The audience interpreted it as playfulness and chemistry. On one level, they were not wrong, but the complexity beneath it was something the film creators never fully explained. Then came the lift. If there's a single image from Dirty Dancing that has outlasted everything else, outlasted the soundtrack, the costumes, the dialogue, it is that lift. Jennifer running across the floor, Patrick catching her, the two of them suspended together above the crowd in a moment of perfect cinematic grace. What the audience saw was effortless. What happened behind it was anything but. Jennifer Grey refused to rehearse it. This was not a small creative difference. For a man like Patrick Swayze, whose entire professional identity was built on repetition, on drilling a movement until it became instinct, Jennifer's refusal to practice the lift was almost incomprehensible. He trained for exactness. He believed in muscle memory the way some people believe in scripture. And here was his co-star, refusing to even approximate the move in rehearsal because she was too afraid of being dropped. Patrick later spoke about this with a mixture of exasperation and retrospective admiration. He could not understand her fear at the time. Later, he came to recognize it as its own kind of courage, the courage to show up and leap without the safety net of preparation, trusting that someone would be there. On the day of filming, there was no more time for debate. The cameras were in position. The music was ready. The moment had arrived. Jennifer ran. Patrick lifted her. And what emerged from that single, unrehearsed, one-take moment was an image so powerful that it has never lost its ability to move people. It was not perfect. It was something better than perfect. It was true. Patrick reflected on that lift many times in the years that followed. He said that it taught him something he could not have learned in any rehearsal room, that trust is not built through preparation alone. Sometimes it is built through the act itself, in real time, with everything on the line. Jennifer had trusted him in the only way she was capable of trusting him, and he had caught her, not just physically, in every way that mattered for that film. In that moment, he had caught her. After Dirty Dancing became the phenomenon that it became, earning over $200 million worldwide against a budget that barely reached $6 million, producing a soundtrack that dominated radio stations for months, turning Patrick Swayze into a household name in People magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, he found himself reflecting not on the triumph but on the process. The interviews he gave in the years following the film were often more candid than audiences expected. He did not mythologize the set. He did not pretend that the chemistry had been effortless or that working with Jennifer had been uncomplicated. He spoke about his impatience. He acknowledged his perfectionism and the ways it sometimes worked against him as much as for him. He talked about learning to release control, not just on that film, but in his life as a whole. Director Kenny Ortega, who had worked closely with Patrick on the choreography, later spoke about watching him undergo a visible transformation during filming. Patrick arrived on set as a technician of the highest order. He left as something more, an artist willing to let imperfection speak. That shift, Ortega suggested, was what made his performance as Johnny Castle so enduring. The cracks in the armor were not mistakes. They were the point. Away from the cameras during those weeks in North Carolina, Patrick was living a life that the public rarely glimpsed. He was a man of varied and serious passions, an avid horseman, a pilot who had earned his own license to fly, a collector of classic cars who spent hours in his garage with the same focused attention he brought to a dance floor. He and his wife Lisa Nemi had built a life together that was grounded, private, and genuine in ways that stood in stark contrast to the Hollywood machinery around them. Lisa, whom he had met when she was a 14-year-old student at his mother's dance school in Houston, had been his partner in every meaningful sense since their marriage in 1975. She was not a background figure in his story. She was its through line. The Dirty Dancing experience, for all its difficulty, affirmed something Patrick had always suspected, that the best things were rarely easy. The relationship between him and Jennifer Grey was never simple, but it produced something that neither of them could have created alone. He brought structure. She brought spontaneity. He brought the body. She brought the heart. Together, in the crucible of that summer, they built a film that has outlasted both of their careers and most of the films of that era. In 2008, Patrick Swayze received a diagnosis that would define the final chapter of his life: Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The odds were devastating, and he knew it. But he did what he had always done. He kept working. He filmed the television series The Beast while undergoing chemotherapy, delivering performances that critics called some of the finest of his career. There is something almost unbearable about that. The image of a man racing the clock, channeling whatever time remained into the work that had always given his life meaning. He passed away on September 14th, 2009, at the age of 57. Lisa was with him at the end, as she had been through every difficult passage of his life. In his final months, he had spoken often about what the Dirty Dancing experience had meant to him, not the fame it generated, not the cultural legacy, but the lesson embedded in the making of it. The lesson that great things are forged in tension, not in comfort. That the most authentic moments are often the ones you cannot plan for. That sometimes the most important thing you can do is run towards something terrifying and trust that